Hi. In this video we'll be continuing with the C# note. This is going to be some examples. So some example notes. No, I don't think we need some actual notes. We've already gone over this. So basically this is passing arguments to methods. So in C# there's a little bit of a difference compared to other languages. So they term argument and parameter a bit different. Whereas Java, for example, has formal parameters and actual parameters. So in Java, arguments and parameters are kind of the same, but in C# they're different. So an argument is any piece of data that is passed into a method when the method is called. So that's an argument. It's any piece of data. An argument is any piece of data that is passed into a method when it is called. So when you have a method call, then that's an argument. But a parameter is a variable that receives an argument that is passed into a method. So basically a parameter is a variable that receives an argument that is passed into a method. So they're a little bit different. We did the actual explanation in the notes. So let's just do some code examples here. So sometimes it is useful not only to call a method, but also to send one or more pieces of data into that method, obviously. So we've seen this before with how to use arguments in a method call. So we can call messagebox.show. So let's just have some notes down here, like code notes. So we can say messagebox.show like some kind of string. So the statement calls the messagebox.show method and passes the string hey as an argument. So this is an argument, that's hey. So another example is that we could have a variable For example, we could have int val points to int.parse str. We could pretend that str is an int, and basically here in this case, so we're saying that val is an int and str is a string variable. The statement calls the int.parse method passing the str variable as an argument. So once again, str is being passed as an argument. As an argument to the parse method. So if you're writing a method and you want to receive arguments when it is called, you must equip the method with one or more parameter variables. So a parameter variable often simply calls a parameter, or a parameter variable often simply called a parameter is a special variable that receives an argument when a method is called. So we can have an example of that here in a sec. So we have, so we just have, let me just go over that one more time. So if you're writing a method and you want to receive arguments when it is called, you must equip the method with one or more parameter variables. A parameter variable, often simply called a parameter, is a special variable that receives an argument when the method is called. So this goes in the definition. It's pretty much the same thing, parameter and argument, but in C# they're different in this way. So I'll show you why they're different. So let's just say we have a method definition here: private void display val takes a int val as parameters. Parameters, that's what it's called. I always probably say parameters even when I pass in stuff here. That's because Java, they kind of term them that way. So I'm just kind of used to that. I call the same thing in C, even in Python. The actual term here might be a little bit different. In C# it's different. So once again, we just have this method definition here, where we can say, for example, messagebox.show. We can say that we want to take val and call toString on it, which will take the val and convert it to a string. So it'll take the val, which is an int, and convert that to a string type. So notice that the int variable declaration that appears inside the parentheses, which is int val, this is the declaration of a parameter variable, which enables the display value method to accept an int value as an argument. So arguments kind of for a method call, parameters for a method definition. Method definition. So this is a parameter. I'll just say param, or you can just go with parameter or param, which is for a method definition. So you could say that arguments are for a method call. So that's pretty much, that's the definition. So you may have me confuse those here and there, because in Java, for example, they have formal parameters and actual parameters. There's no, so what's a formal parameter? So we could pretend that this is, actually I forgot which one was which. I think these are formal. In Java, the method definition is the formal, it's called formal parameters. Someone's like, why the hell is this guy talking about Java again? I'm trying to explain what basically it's just a theory. It's similar. Like all code is similar. For example, well, a lot of code is similar. So we have this in Java, it's called formal parameters, which is the same thing as just a parameter in C#. Now if we have a method call such as display val, and we're passing in, let's just say we're passing in a val in the method call. This is called actual parameters in Java, which is not an argument, but it is, well, it is, because I believe in Java you can use the term parameters and arguments interchangeably. So you could say here that this is actually actual arguments and formal arguments, but pretty much I just always stuck with parameters. I like that word better. It just makes more sense to me. Because arguments, well, it sounds like I'm arguing with someone. It didn't help me understand when I actually learned code from scratch. When I first learned object-oriented programming, after C, which I learned C first a long time ago. When I finally got into object-oriented programming, the word parameters actually meant more to me, so it helped me understand it better. So you can just think of them as parameters. Well, I guess, because in Java, in C# you have to call them arguments. But just be careful with that. Just know that that's Java. So actual parameters is Java. Formal parameters is Java. And they still use Java in a lot of things, such as like some web design, Spring Boot, and all that. We'll probably talk about Spring Boot later on at some point. You don't have to use Spring Boot because there's other technologies you can use. We'll be going over a lot of stuff coming up, like Ajax and all kinds of stuff that's like really good for the workforce. So that's coming up very soon. But just know until we get there, these things are important, like actual parameters, formal parameters. But in C# they're just called arguments. So that's C#. So that's pretty much it. So let's have so we could call, once again, of course, we could call display val passing in. We could say that it takes a val, or we could say that it takes 5. So these are arguments in C#. I'll just take the Java out so I don't confuse anyone. So this is arguments. It's C#. And in this method definition, it takes parameters. It takes an int val. In this case, we're passing in 5 as val. That's pretty much it. These are tricky concepts when you're starting out code. I remember getting I used to get like worried about just passing in parameters. I was like, well, how do you do that? There's a special way to do it. You have to do it in these parentheses, and then you can call it. How do you access the parameter? Well, you just call val like this. But once you get the hang of it, it's easier. But at first, it's quite difficult. So just practicing little code snippets like this help you understand. Just like writing stuff out like this over and over again, it'll help you understand. Eventually you won't have to practice it anymore. After maybe a year or two. Well, not that long, but after a while you'll get it. So you can pass the contents of variables and the values of expressions as arguments. So you've probably seen this before, but you could say, that you want to pass, for example, display val. You could pass in val as we did. You could say you want to call display val and pass in val times 4 or whatever, times 5. Val times 5, or you could say that you want to call display val and you want to pass, for example, int.parse, and you want to pass in like the string 1000, which would turn that into a number. Because remember, you're passing this value or string as an int. So that's pretty much it. So there's a little bit of a code example that we have here with 3 buttons. So one button. Well, actually, so we could have a method that's private void display value, takes a value param and shows the value to string. So I'll show you guys how to write even the event handlers from scratch. So we'll do that coming up soon. Okay, so let's just go with this example here. Kind of a longer example, but not a lab. So maybe let's just go under here, kind of make some like a new section here. So let's go with a code example. Code example, so we have let's pretend we have some like using statements. Actually, we could just code in here. That might be fine. We could just delete it after. So we have, let's say we have some method here. So let's say we have private void. Say that we want to display a value, and this takes an int val as a parameter. So we have a method that we've just created. It's not an event handler, it's a method, but here we just want to say, okay, well, we want to call a message box and say dot show and pass in val. We're gonna so how do we reference our parameter? So to reference our parameter, we just call it. So we say val dot toString is what we want to do. So here we're passing in a parameter and we're referencing the parameter in the method. We're calling messagebox.show and we're going to reference our parameter. So when we call, for example, later on, and for example we want to call display val, then of course we pass in, for example, we're calling it like this, display val, we're going to pass in, for example, 5. Now 5, what's really happening is when we pass 5 as an argument, the method definition then, so when we have a method call, what happens? So our method call happens and then the code execution transfers to the method definition, right? So in the method definition then it says, okay, well, I've matched your definition here to display val. It takes an int val, so then it's going to say, okay, well, the val that we passed in was 5, which is an int. So it's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to step into the square brackets here. It's only one line to execute messagebox.show. I'm going to call val, which is 5, and pass it as a string to messagebox.show. So you can convert 5 to a string. It's a little bit confusing. Well, sometimes you need to convert values to a string. What's happening is this 5 is becoming, from an int like this, it's going from an int like that to a string. So it's going to take that 5 and surround it with those kind of snake eyes. The shift semicolon, I think that's what it is. I think it's called a quotation, double quotations. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to go from basically just no quotations like that. That's an int, since there's no decimal. Then it's going to put quotations around it, and it's going to convert a type like that. So there's more to the example. Okay. I want to show you how to do this. So I kind of want to show you how to do this whole thing with so to actually instantiate the buttons, you just go button, say button 1. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot the private. So private button 1. That's all you have to do to create an object reference variable. So let's just say we have 3. So button 2, private button 3. So we just name the button 1, button 2, button 3. So these are called object reference variables. So then this is a constructor here. We've talked about that before. I think we talked about it. You may have seen me do a little bit with it here and there. But for example, we can just say button 1 points to new button like that. Then we can say button 2 points a new button, like that. Same thing, button 3 points a new button, like that. Now we have 3 buttons. We haven't really placed them anywhere. Usually you probably want to do that in the constructor, because when the form loads, then it sets everything up. So I'm just trying to think, how did I do this before? I have to pull up my code that I had. Okay, let me try to pull that up here. C#, not Python, okay. Here we go, I have some stuff here, perfect, okay. So you can use a table layout panel. I'm just trying to figure out how I did this before. I think okay. Here, let me try this, just to keep it simple. Just because I wanted to show you guys how to do this. This would be a good opportunity. Because I kept saying I'll show you guys how to instantiate these objects yourself. So I showed you guys how to do that. So text box is the same thing. You just go private text box, whatever. Then you instantiate it here. Text box points to new text box. Text box label, it's all the same. Save file. So yeah, so when we do this, you guys will see more controls. So then here, what else we can do? So we can say so to name the form itself, you just go like this. I'll show you a couple things. So this dot, remember to reference the form, you just call this. So the name is the identifier, basically. So this dot name points to, we could say button. Let's just say button method demo. That's going to be the name of the form. The problem with C# is that it doesn't automatically update the visual aspect, kind of like the drag and drop. That the problem with C#, at least in Windows Forms, is that it doesn't update automatically. So if you write the code and you're like, well, the design editor didn't update, it doesn't do that. There's a special, ChatGPT was trying to tell me there's a special version you can use which has XML, which updates automatically, but XML itself is kind of tricky. It's not hard at all. It's actually quite easy to learn. It just at first it looks like HTML. That's basically what it is. Instead of hyper whatever markup language, it's extensible markup language. So it's similar. It's basically the cousin of HTML. So it looks like a complete different language. But in this case, it doesn't update right away. You have to actually see the update, you have to run it. That's the problem with it. ChatGPT was telling me that there's a new version of forms that you can use with that has XML in it. So when you like type code, it updates automatically. That's how it works in Android Studio. So you can see your Android apps update automatically. So I guess Microsoft eventually caught on to that. They made it better. This is the old school way to do it, so it's good to learn. It just doesn't have all the features, like it doesn't update automatically and all that. But that's, yeah, so we'll try to get into that actual stuff later on. But for example, we could do a few things here. So we could say that well, there's dialogues, buttons. Okay, perfect. So we could say, okay, well, then we have a new button. So here we could, for example, say that like button 1 dot name points to button 1 as well. We could say, okay, well, button 1 dot text, because remember buttons have a text property. We could just also call it button 1, maybe with a space. Then we could say, for example, button 1 dot auto size. We could set that to true. Whoops, with no string. We could change the font. You have to use a font family. This is a little bit tricky. You just have to go button 1 dot font dot font points to new font. Pass in here button 1 dot font family. I don't really like this, but it's like that. So font family and then 36, just like that. That's all you have to do. You could change the actual font somehow as well. So to create the event handler, this is how you do it. So you just go button 1 dot. We could say click. I think we can name it to click. I'm not sure. I think maybe click perhaps is actually a built-in kind of event. You can check that in the docs. Button 1 dot click. Let's just see if there's a click here. Yeah, I think it is, because it says event. I don't think you can see that, but it says event handler. There's like click, client size change. We'll go with click, so I guess it knows about the click event. So you have to use this, forgot what that's called. So plus equals, use those symbols, and then we say new event handler. So there's a few ways to do this. This is probably the easiest way. You can also use a lambda, which kind of gets confusing. I don't really use lambdas, I just do it this way most of the time. So this is the same thing as Java pretty much. So then here we say new event handler. So we want to call it, let's just say button 1 dot, or button 1 underscore click. And it's saying, well, hey, where's button 1 dot click? So what you have to do is here is you have to go where is this? Class. It should be in the class, shouldn't it? It should be in the class, okay. So then, for example, here you could say, well, we have button 1 underscore click, which takes parameters, what does it take again? Object sender, and event args e. Okay, so now it's like we got something here. Why is this? Is this supposed to be outside the class? No. Button 1. Button 1 dot click plus equals new event handler. Then we pass in button 1 underscore click. Maybe just waiting for something in here. So we just want to say, for example, messagebox.show. You click the button, or you clicked button 1. Excuse me. Okay, what's happening with this? I think maybe, no, it should be, what's wrong with this? Button 1 underscore click. It should work because I've already done this before. Everything worked. Like I've already tested similar code, not this exact code. Like I've done this before. That's what I mean. Should be working. Can't see what's the problem here. Where is that? Problems. Okay. Cannot resolve. Method must have a return type. Return type. Is that why? Okay, that's why. So private void. My bad. There we go. That should be working fine now. So I just forgot the void. Well, I don't think I need to put private, but it needs to have a void return. It has to either return something or not. So it's basically it either returns something or it doesn't. Oh, what's this here? What's wrong with that? Okay, so now this works. One more thing is that we didn't actually place this button anywhere. So to do that, one way is to use a layout, which is probably the best way. So we'll go over table layout panels. That's a good layout to use. There's other layouts you can use. We'll talk about maybe them some more later on. But to just place something somewhere, we can just go button1.location. Points to new. We have to create a point object. Then, for example, we could just put that at like 550, 100. So if we actually just run that, so the button should actually just pop up somewhere random. So if I just run that, there's an error. Okay, what happened here? Unexpected token on 44, private void. Okay, this thing's outside of, what is this? I think it's outside of, it's in nowhere land pretty much. So we'll just move that down there. Then I think we still have a missing bracket here. Let's just see what's up with this. Perfect, okay. Let's try that and just see if that places our button somewhere, so I'll run that. Okay, so the button didn't actually pop up. Why is that? Okay, so button1, button1.name, button1.text. It might actually be off the grid here, so let's just go with 100 by 100, see if that gets into the form. Nope. Okay. Oh, you know what? I didn't add the controls to the form. That's something else you have to do. So what you have to do is say controls.add button1. Unless you're adding them to a layout, you have to do that. Let's try that and see if that works. There we go. So that should work. And if you click it, it'll say you clicked button 1. So that's exactly how you do it. So there's layouts you can use to help you actually get everything into place. The drag and drop does help in situations where if you're kind of using the old school version of the forms, there's a new version of it. I can direct you guys to that later on. I'll have to open my ChatGPT. But if you get stuck, ChatGPT can help. So what else are we actually doing here? So back to the actual method. Kind of the method and demonstration here. So we could just basically display a value so we could have a display value method instead of calling messagebox.show. We could actually set this up to print some kind of values. But I don't think we really need to do this. That's pretty good. So in the lab coming up, we'll be working on passing an argument to a method, doing a card example. So I'll have to get some pictures of cards from the net. So then we'll do we'll use a switch. We'll switch kind of some different things. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys liked the video, you can like and subscribe to the channel to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. So thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one in the lab. Take care.